G'day team, Craig here from Diggermate Yass. Today we're going to look at how to lay a concrete slab.
Want the best rates on mini excavators and tight access earth moving equipment? Go to diggermate.com and get it done with Diggermate.
So we're not going to go into the detail on how to excavate the soil, to lay the formwork or cut the Rio. There are plenty of videos out there on that. Suffice to say, either lay it level or with a slight fall to meet your needs. In this case, we're preparing a slab for a generator. The electrician has already been. We've dug the hole, installed the conduit in the top left hand corner, and we've used 2-foot star pickets to hold the sides together and simply nailed it off with a nail gun. Reinforcement 25mm minimum from each edge, and it's on standard 55-65mm chairs that you can buy at Bunnings or any local hardware store to keep the reinforcement in the middle of the slab. So now let's look at the tools that we need to perform the job. On the right hand side you can see standard concrete mixer. In this case that concrete mixer comes apart and can be used as a wheelbarrow itself. Because of the way the ground is, we'll be using in its standard mode. In that case we need wheelbarrow and a couple of shovels, one for spreading the concrete, the small square mouth, and the larger square mouth is for getting the materials out the back of the truck. You'll need a gauging bucket, which you can buy at a local hardware store, or alternatively grab a hold of one from your local builder or plasterer. Just drop down the site, there are plenty of these being thrown out. You'll need a marker pen, you can see on the side of the bucket. We have a couple of different trowels, some finishing trowels and steel trowels and floats, an edge finisher, and in this case we have a broom so that we can do a broom finish on the job. Alternatively, you could use the steel float, the green one there, to create a figure of 8 pattern or something similar in the top of the concrete as well. If you need to provide a non-slip finish, works just as well as the broom, but takes a little bit more time and can look a slightly better job. Now, a couple of optional items that you may wish to buy, hire or borrow. On the left is a screed, aluminium screed. They come in a range of lengths, so you can use that to screed the concrete, gives you a nice flat edge while it's wet and pliable. And the next one is a bull float, and the bull float is there to take out all the lumps and bumps, the final stage of laying the concrete and the preparation for finishing. And the final preparation, let's talk a little bit about safety. Okay, there's a prevalence now of silicosis, so you need to be aware of that when handling dry concrete. So ensure you have a mask and appropriate footwear in case you drop something on your boots. And don't forget a set of gumboots, otherwise the concrete will destroy your work boots. Now, the critical element is to get your mix right is this gauging bucket, and you'll see the importance of this as we go forward. But we need to get a consistent mix, and we simply need to be able to lift what it is that we put into the bucket. My recommendation is to mark the bucket around about 2/3 the way up and use that to gauge your sand aggregate and cement mix. Okay, to achieve 25 MPa mix, which is standard for reinforced concrete, we need to use a 1:4 ratio, cement, sand and aggregate. That's 1:4. In this case the material has already been mixed at the landscaping yard, so we simply need to have 1 part cement to 6 parts aggregate, which is the sand aggregate mix. As you can see, we've marked the gauging bucket with a permanent marker about 2/3 the way up, and usually this is a comfortable lift for most people for doing a mix. So we've added our 6 gauges of aggregate to our cement slurry, and as we've gone we've added water. We wanted to get it to around about this sort of consistency, and as you can see 6-to-1 gauge of 2/3 of the bucket absolutely fills the bowl and is perfect for what we've got. You may need to adjust it for the concrete mixer that you're using. suffice to say, you don't want your concrete too wet, and you also don't want it too dry. So what you'll find is you'll get a feel for the medium once you start to lay it. You want to be able to move the concrete around. You don't want it too dry that it's difficult to finish, and you don't want it too wet that, one, it affects the strength, and two, it is too sloppy to be able to form into shape. So once you've placed your concrete, make sure you get in with the shovel and give it a good vibration around the edges so that you take all the air voids out of it. Then simply adjust it so that it's roughly level. Don't get too pedantic about it, because we'll deal with that in the next step, which is screeding the concrete. Now you can hire or borrow a professional screed, aluminium screed for the job, but I'm going to demonstrate it just using a piece of off-cut timber here. There's just a piece of 90x35 that we'll use on edge in order to screed. Let's have a quick go. Now don't worry too much about the finish at this stage. We'll come back with a float and sort it out later. What you want is a relatively smooth finish, just balanced off either side of the cement, off either side of the formwork. One tip I will give you is don't try and operate your screed or whatever it is flat on the timbers. Have it at a slight angle when you're going this direction and that direction, so that you push the concrete into itself, so you get that nice finish. Okay, the concrete's been placed and screeded, just using a 90x35 piece of timber as we discussed earlier. All right, and the next step is clean as you go. You need to clean the barrow and the mixer while we're waiting for this to quickly go off. And also we start on the finishing process. Right, and you can see on the left hand side there, I've got a steel float and a finishing trowel, and I've done that first part just with the steel float, just floating over the top. And I'll give you a demo of how we can do that, and then I'll come back and show you the alternate method, which is using a bull float. Just give me a minute. So this is the bull float, and you can see attached at the handle there's a little lever. Now when we use the bull float, as we want to go forward, we turn it clockwise, and that raises the front edge, and as we push it, it levels the concrete down. When we want to come back, we turn it anti-clockwise, and we pull it back, and we use the bottom edge, and we just use it in a sweeping motion like a broom. Okay, so we've screeded off, laid all our concrete, and we've screeded it off with our trusty piece of 90x35, and now is the next step in the finishing process. All right, while the concrete is still wet and pliable, we need to get a finishing trowel. They look like this. They can have rounded edges or the like, but they're quite flat, normally about 18 inches long, and you can buy these cheap as chips at one of your hardware stores, or hire them out as you go. The trick to this is, again, like the screed, is we don't use it flat on the concrete. You need to raise the edge in the direction you're going. I'll just give you a demonstration. Okay, and you can feel the lumps underneath, and you'll see the concrete sort of ripple as it goes through. That's okay. That's the pliability you want at this stage of the process. Remember, this isn't the finish. This is just the start of the finishing process. The alternate method to this is to use a bull float. Now, a bull float used in two directions, exactly the same. Lift it up in one direction and all the way back. And as you can see, there's a handle that I'm turning to adjust the bull float as it does its job. Now the key to this is to do it in two directions. So we've done it across lengthways, then come back got it jagged there. You see, don't be worried if you get it stuck. Simply go back and do it again. Then we'll just finish it off. Righto, we've now got the wet and pliable concrete pretty level. Now it's time to let it go off a bit. This is the time to clean all the tools you've used so far and prepare yourself for the finish, which will start with edging and then we'll do the final finish. We'll have a look at a couple of finishes here, a broom finish and using a steel float to get a finish. All right, it depends on what you want. If you're after a smooth finish, then you'll need to use a finishing trowel as opposed. But for most jobs, particularly paths, and the one that we've got here, it's going to have a generator on it. We want a non-slip finish, so we can either just run a broom over the top or do some nice figure of eights using the finishing, using the steel float. Okay, we've let the concrete set a little bit. We've cleaned all our gear. The next step is to edge, and again we use an edging tool. Again, you can buy these at your local hardware store. They're quite cheap. And you'll see they've got a raised edge on either end and a cove that is in the sides, and simply you just run this along the edge. You can let this get quite firm. I tend to go through early while it's still pliable just to get the initial bit done and then come back when it's set and tidy it up. So just to demonstrate what we're saying, so we've got the raised edges at either end and we have the cove that you can see there. It's a matter of simply lowering down one end, raising the other as you go across. Well, that's quite wet. It's not the finished job. We're just getting that edge set so that we don't have to fight the rocks as we go forward towards the end. So that is just the first part of the process. Okay, we've done the initial edging and we've just touched up where we've got those edges come out, and you can see I've got a little mate joining me on the slab here. Don't worry about them. The key at this stage is not to overwork the slab. We don't want to continually go back and touch up the slab with a float just because the little imperfections or pinholes start to appear. That's all part of the process. We need it to now just go off. If you overwork it, you'll bring all of the materials to the top, all of the fines to the top, and you'll end up with a sandy, powdery finish on top. We just need to let it go off, and we want to get it to the point where our finger impressions are slight in the concrete, and then we can start the next phase of the finishing process. So at this point, it's time to give yourself a pat on the back and go and grab a cold brew. I'm going to grab a Resh's out of the fridge while I wait for this to go off. After you've had your beer or whatever beverage you've chosen to take, the job doesn't stop while you're waiting for the concrete to go off. You can wander around any excess concrete, cut into small blocks so it's easier to just pick up and throw on the back of whatever it is that you're using to dispose of it. Same around the sides, just take the dags, pull them off the edge and get them ready for disposal. Now it's a matter of just letting the chemical reaction in the concrete take place, and depending on the temperature of day, that will determine how long it takes to go off. Okay, again, while we're waiting for the concrete to dry, might have a chat about a couple of things for consideration when you're planning a job. We could have done this with ready mix. We could have used the pre-mixed concrete bags. It really comes down to convenience and cost. So when you talk about convenience, certainly ready mix. But for a job like this, it's 1/4 of a metre of concrete. It's an expensive way to purchase it in, but certainly could have been done. If you live in an urban environment, you might get a better deal on a minicrete. But again, 1/4 of a metre of concrete is a very small load. The next option was to use premix bags. In our case, that was 25 premix bags of concrete. Yeah, so 25 bags of premix concrete is going to set you back about $270. So the final option is to do it the way we've done it. 4 bags of Portland Type A cement and 1/4 of a metre of aggregate mix, concrete aggregate mix from Robbo's in Yass, set us back $54. So significant difference depending on which way you want to attack it. So the concrete's still wet, but it's dry. It's hardened enough that we can go around and take out the edges that were created by the edging trowel. All right, we're simply using the finishing trowel. And we blend it in as such. Now we've got a couple of options for finishing the concrete, and let's have a look at 2. First one we'll look at is a broom finish. Now the broom finish provides a non-slip surface. Now I haven't gone all the way with this finish at this stage, just giving you a demonstration of how to do it. Pretty simple, and basically you just drag the broom from one end of the slab to the other, and it gives a nice finish, and we just go around and tidy it up at the end. And we can see that the broom finish as opposed to where we've troweled it, and you get that non-slip finish. The alternate to that is what we'll look at next. And what we're going to look at now is a steel float finish, and we'll just go over the same spot so you can see how that's done, and then I'll go and finish the slab off in a minute. The steel float, it's simply a matter of taking the float, and doing figures of 8. So those figure of 8 finishes just give it to me, a better looking finish, more professional finish. But yeah, they're both effective and both very simple to do. Let's have a closer look at the float finish. Okay, and again, there we have the steel float finish. We just tie that into where the edging's been. We'll go around and do the initial steel float finish. We'll come back and then we'll do some edging again, so that we'll get a nice crisp line where they join.
Thanks for watching. To get the best prices on machinery hire, book machines, see specs and availability, go to Diggermate.com. If you found this video useful, please be a mate of ours and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click on the share link below and share this with your friends, and give us a thumbs up.